There is a kind of power that cannot be bought, stolen, or faked. A presence that enters the room before you speak. A force that makes men listen, makes enemies hesitate, and earns you respect without begging for it. Most men will never have it, not because they are weak, but because they are trapped, shackled by invisible chains, habits so small, so subtle that they go unnoticed. But make no mistake, these habits are fatal. They will erode your presence, drain your authority, and make you insignificant in the eyes of the world. But what if you could break free? Imagine a life where your words carried weight, where your actions were met with admiration, not indifference, where people didn't just hear you, but felt you. The way a great warrior is felt before he draws his sword. The way a wise king is obeyed without raising his voice. This is not about tricks or manipulation. It is about who you are at your core. And the truth is, respect is not demanded, it is cultivated. The ancient Stoics understood this. They knew that a man's presence in the world is nothing more than a reflection of his discipline, his virtues, and, above all, the habits he refuses to tolerate in himself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Most men waste their lives trapped in patterns that destroy their dignity, weaken their resolve, and make them invisible in the eyes of the world. But the rare few, they walk a different path. Today I will expose the 6 habits that weaken you, habits that strip you of the respect you deserve. Ignore these and you will remain just another face in the crowd. But if you have the courage to change, you will become a man people respect, a man who cannot be ignored. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Every like, subscribe helps us continue our mission of sharing knowledge. And leave a comment below and share your opinion on these habits, or tell me which one resonates with you the most. Ready to unlock more wisdom? Let's get started. Habit 1. The habit of speaking too much and saying too little. There is a peculiar tragedy in the way most men use their words. They speak, yet they are unheard. They explain, yet they remain misunderstood. They argue, yet they convince no one. This is not because the world is deaf, but because their words are empty, hollow noises that pass through the air, leaving nothing behind. A man who speaks too much without substance is like a river that makes noise, but carries no water. He is noticed, but he is not respected. The ancient Stoics understood that true power is not in speaking, but in speaking with precision, with weight, with a kind of energy that makes men stop and listen. They understood that words, like a sharpened blade, should be few but deadly. Epictetus warned against idle speech. Nature has given us one tongue, but 2 ears, that we may hear twice as much as we speak. Yet, the modern man ignores this wisdom. He fills every silence with words, believing that if he speaks enough, people will listen. He tells his plans to the world, thinking that saying it out loud brings him closer to success. He explains himself too much, desperate for others to understand him, to approve of him, to validate his thoughts. But what he does not realize is this: the more you speak, the less weight your words carry. Consider the men throughout history who commanded true respect. They were not the ones who spoke constantly. They were not the ones who wasted words. Julius Caesar, when captured by pirates as a young man, did not beg, nor did he attempt to entertain his captors with endless talk. Instead, he spoke little, but when he did, his words carried iron. He laughed in their faces and told them he would return to crucify them all. They laughed, but they remembered his words. Weeks later, he made good on his promise. His words were not wasted. They were not thrown around carelessly. They were deliberate, like a sculptor striking stone. Now ask yourself, how often do you speak just to fill the air? How often do you explain yourself when no explanation is needed? How often do you tell people what you will do instead of simply doing it? The man who speaks too much loses control. His emotions spill into his words. He apologizes too often. He reveals his weaknesses. He becomes predictable, and predictability breeds contempt. A man should be like an iceberg. What is visible is only a fraction of his depth. The most dangerous men in history were not loud. They did not waste energy trying to convince others of their power. They let their presence do the talking. The samurai of ancient Japan believed that speaking too much was a sign of weakness. They trained themselves to embrace silence, to let their actions speak. Even in moments of great insult, they did not retaliate with words. They waited. They acted when the time was right. The modern world is full of men who have lost this discipline. Social media has made them believe that every thought they have must be shared, every emotion must be expressed, every moment of their life must be narrated. But what does this achieve? Nothing. It turns men into background noise, easily ignored, easily dismissed. A man who is always speaking is a man who is always explaining himself. And a man who is always explaining himself is a man who is uncertain, a man who needs others to understand him because he does not fully understand himself. Silence, on the other hand, is a weapon. It forces others to lean in, to wonder, to fill in the blanks with their own assumptions. It creates an air of mystery, an aura of self-possession, a sense of power that cannot be faked. Think of the people you respect the most. Are they the ones who never stop talking? Or are they the ones who speak with purpose? A lion does not need to announce that it is a lion. A king does not need to remind his subjects that he is king. The moment you learn to master your words, to cut away the excess, to speak only when necessary, you will notice a shift. People will listen when you speak. They will respect your silence. They will know that when you do speak, your words matter. This is not about being cold or distant. It is about understanding that respect is earned, not through the volume of your voice, but through the gravity of your words. If you want respect, speak less. But when you do speak, make sure your words carry the weight of 1,000 unspoken thoughts. Habit 2. The habit of seeking validation from others. A man who seeks validation is a man who has already lost himself. He moves through the world like a leaf in the wind, bending and twisting according to the opinions of others, never standing firm in his own convictions. He lives not by his own judgment, but by the judgment of the crowd. And a man who depends on the crowd for his sense of worth will always be their servant, never their equal. The need for validation is one of the most subtle and corrosive habits a man can have. It begins quietly, like a whisper in the back of the mind. You do something, and you look around. Did they approve? Did they notice? Did they validate you? If they did, you feel good. If they didn't, doubt creeps in. Did I do the right thing? Should I change? Should I adjust myself to fit their expectations? What you do not realize is that every time you seek validation, you are training yourself to be dependent. You are giving away your power, little by little, until there is nothing left. You become a man who is not led by his own mind, but by the opinions of others. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, warned against this weakness. He understood that the moment you allow others to dictate your self-worth, you become a prisoner. He wrote, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do. Only what you do." A man who is desperate for approval will betray himself to get it. He will laugh at jokes he does not find funny. He will agree with ideas he does not believe in. He will nod along when he should stand firm. And worst of all, he will change himself to fit into spaces where he does not belong. But a man who does not seek validation, he is unshakable. He does what he believes is right, whether people approve or not. He speaks his mind, not to please others, but because it is true. He walks his own path, without waiting for permission. And because of this, he commands respect. Consider the great men of history. Did they seek validation? Did Socrates ask the Athenian crowd for their approval before speaking? No. He spoke the truth, even when it led him to his death. Did Marcus Aurelius rule according to the desires of the mob? No. He ruled with wisdom, guided by his own principles. Did the samurai warriors of Japan live for the praise of others? No. They lived by their own code, the Bushido, which dictated their honor, regardless of public opinion. A man who is free from the need for validation is a man who can never be controlled. This is why society constantly pressures you to care about what others think. It is why you are taught from a young age to seek approval, from teachers, from peers, from employers, from strangers on the internet. It is why social media exists, to condition you to crave likes, comments, and approval from people you will never meet. But the moment you let go of this need, something remarkable happens. You begin to respect yourself. And when you respect yourself, others follow. Imagine walking into a room without worrying about what anyone thinks of you. Imagine speaking your mind without fear of disagreement. Imagine living your life on your own terms, not because others approve, but because it is what you believe is right. This is not arrogance. This is not recklessness. This is self-possession, the rarest and most powerful trait a man can have. The need for validation is a disease. It keeps men weak. It keeps them anxious, always wondering, always doubting, always adjusting themselves to fit the expectations of others. And the cruel irony is that the more you seek validation, the less respect you receive. Because people can sense it. They can smell the insecurity, the desperation for approval. And nothing is more repulsive to the human spirit than a man who does not stand on his own 2 feet. The cure is simple, but not easy. You must stop looking outward for permission to be yourself. You must turn inward. You must decide once and for all that your own approval is enough. But how? How does a man break free from a lifetime of conditioning? First, he must embrace solitude. He must spend time alone, away from the noise of society, to understand who he really is. He must strip away the masks he wears for others and ask himself, who am I when no one is watching? Second, he must act without hesitation. When he knows something is right, he must do it. Not because others agree, but because his own judgment tells him it is the right path. And third, he must accept that disapproval is a sign of strength. If everyone agrees with you, it means you have never taken a stand. If no one criticizes you, it means you have never done anything of significance. The greatest men in history were not liked by all. They were hated by many because they refused to conform. Respect is not given to the man who seeks it. It is given to the man who no longer needs it. The moment you stop seeking validation, you will notice a shift. Your presence will feel different. People will listen to you more closely. They will take you more seriously. And most importantly, you will walk through the world as a man who belongs to himself. This is the difference between a man who is respected and a man who is forgotten. The respected man does not ask for permission to be himself. He simply is. Habit 3. The habit of avoiding discomfort. A man's character is not built in comfort. It is not shaped by easy days, soft living, or a path free of obstacles. It is forged in discomfort, in struggle, in the relentless trials that test his endurance and force him to grow. A man who avoids discomfort is a man who remains weak, no matter how much he wishes to be strong. The world today is designed to keep men comfortable. Everything is made easier, faster, more convenient. If you are hungry, food arrives at your door. If you are bored, entertainment is endless. If you are cold, heat is instant. If you are tired, a soft bed awaits. But with each layer of comfort, something is lost. A man becomes slower, softer, less capable of enduring hardship. His mind weakens. His body weakens. His willpower fades into nothing. Marcus Aurelius understood this danger. He ruled over one of the greatest empires in history, yet he did not allow himself to grow soft. He trained his mind to embrace difficulty. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The very obstacles you seek to avoid are the ones that will make you powerful. Yet most men today flee from hardship. They choose the easy road, the path of least resistance, the life that requires the least effort. They avoid conflict, they avoid failure, they avoid struggle, and in doing so, they avoid growth. A man who refuses to face discomfort will never be respected. People instinctively recognize weakness, even if it is hidden behind words, money, or an illusion of success. They know when a man has never tested himself. They know when he has lived his life inside a bubble, protected from the weight of true responsibility. Think of the men who have earned the deepest respect throughout history. Were they men of comfort? Were they men who lived in fear of hardship? No. They were warriors, leaders, philosophers, men who embraced the struggle of existence and came out stronger because of it. The Spartans, the most feared warriors of ancient Greece, trained their bodies and minds through constant hardship. From childhood, they were stripped of all luxuries. They ate little, slept on the ground, and endured brutal training so that when real battle came, they would not break. Now, ask yourself, when was the last time you truly tested yourself? When was the last time you embraced discomfort instead of avoiding it? Most men go through life running from anything that challenges them. They avoid difficult conversations because they fear confrontation. They avoid difficult work because they fear failure. They avoid pushing themselves physically because they fear pain. And yet the very thing they fear is the thing that would set them free. A man who embraces discomfort is a man who commands respect. He is unshaken by hardship. He does not complain because he has trained himself to endure. He does not quit because he has made discomfort his ally, not his enemy. He walks through life knowing that no matter what challenges arise, he will not break because he has already faced himself in the harshest conditions. But how does a man begin to embrace discomfort? How does he reverse years of conditioning that have taught him to seek comfort at all costs? The answer is simple. He must make suffering his teacher. He must intentionally expose himself to discomfort, not out of self-hatred, but out of the understanding that it is the only way to become unbreakable. He must train his body, not just for aesthetics, but to push his limits, to build discipline, to harden himself against weakness. He must seek out challenges that force him to confront failure, rejection, and struggle. He must sit in the discomfort of silence, of solitude, of uncertainty, and learn to master his mind instead of running from his thoughts. Most importantly, he must shift his mindset. He must stop seeing discomfort as something to be feared and start seeing it as the path to true strength. Every great man has suffered. Every great man has struggled. What separates them from the weak is that they did not run from it. They did not hide. They walked into the storm and came out the other side. If you want respect, stop avoiding discomfort. Stop seeking the easy road. Stop hiding from the challenges that scare you. Step into the fire and let it forge you into the man you were meant to be. Because in the end, the only men who are truly respected are those who have earned it through struggle, through discipline, through an unshakable commitment to becoming something greater than they were yesterday. Habit 4. The habit of breaking your own word. A man is only as strong as his word. His promises, his commitments, his declarations, these are the foundations of his character. If he speaks and his words mean nothing, then he is nothing. If he makes promises and does not keep them, he is weak. If he tells himself he will do something and then fails to act, he is his own worst enemy. Nothing erodes respect faster than a man who cannot be trusted. And trust is not just about honesty toward others. It is about integrity with yourself. If you tell yourself that you will wake up early and then you don't, you have broken your own word. If you say you will start a new habit and then quit after a week, you have proven that your word is worthless. If you commit to something and then make excuses when it gets difficult, you have built a habit of failure. A man who breaks his own word is not only unreliable to others, he becomes unreliable to himself. And this is the most dangerous weakness of all. When a man cannot trust himself, his own mind becomes his enemy. His own words become meaningless. His own goals become impossible, not because they are beyond his ability, but because he has conditioned himself to quit before he reaches them. The Stoics understood that self-mastery begins with discipline. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Because improvement requires sacrifice. It requires discipline. It requires a man to do what he said he would do, even when no one is watching, even when the world does not reward him, even when the path is difficult. But most men do not live this way. They make resolutions, but they do not follow through. They set goals, but they do not commit. They speak with conviction, but their actions betray their words. And every time they do this, they lose a piece of their own strength. A man who does not keep his word is a man who cannot be relied upon. No one takes him seriously, because his words are like smoke, visible for a moment, then gone. His promises mean nothing, because those who know him have seen how easily he breaks them. And worse, he does not even take himself seriously. When he sets a goal, a small voice in the back of his mind whispers, "You won't follow through." Because he has proven to himself over and over that he is not a man of action. Imagine two men. One speaks little but always does what he says he will do. If he promises to be somewhere, he is there. If he sets a goal, he achieves it. If he tells himself he will wake up at dawn, he is up before the sun. His word is law. The second man speaks endlessly about what he will do. He makes grand plans, he tells people about his ambitions, but he never follows through. He is full of excuses. His words are empty, his commitments fragile, his discipline non-existent. Which man do you respect? A man's value in the eyes of the world is determined by his reliability, not his charm, not his talent, not even his intelligence, but his ability to do what he said he would do. Because this is rare. The world is full of men who talk. The world is full of men who dream, but few men execute. The samurai of ancient Japan had a concept called jiri, a duty-bound obligation to honor one's commitments, no matter the personal cost. To them, a man who broke his word was worse than a coward. He was unworthy of the title of warrior. They believed that a man's life was defined by his ability to act with integrity, to follow through, to be dependable in every moment. Now think about yourself. How often do you break your own word? How often do you say you will do something, only to let yourself down? How many times have you set a goal, only to abandon it at the first sign of difficulty? If you cannot trust yourself, why should anyone else trust you? Respect is not built through words, it is built through action. The moment you start treating your own word as sacred, everything changes. Your confidence grows because you trust yourself. Your presence becomes stronger because people know you are a man who follows through. Your success becomes inevitable because you have eliminated the one thing that destroys most men: self-betrayal. But how does a man fix this? How does he rebuild his integrity after years of broken promises? First, he must stop speaking carelessly. He must stop making empty commitments. If he says something, he must mean it. If he is unsure, he must stay silent until he is ready to commit fully. Second, he must start small. If his discipline is weak, he cannot expect to transform overnight. He must begin by keeping the smallest promises, waking up when he says he will, finishing what he starts, holding himself to the same standards in private as he does in public. And third, he must punish his own weakness. When he fails to keep his word, he must not make excuses. He must recognize that he has failed himself and correct his path. There is no room for self-pity, only self-improvement. The world does not respect the man who speaks the loudest. It respects the man who speaks the least but follows through the most. If you want respect, do not ask for it. Earn it. Keep your word, especially to yourself. Become the kind of man who does what he says, without fail, without hesitation. Because a man who cannot trust himself will never command the trust of others. And a man who cannot be trusted will never be respected. Habit 5. The habit of overindulgence. A man who cannot control himself is a man who will never be respected. Discipline is the foundation of strength, and overindulgence is its greatest enemy. The more a man indulges in his desires without restraint, the weaker he becomes, not only in body but in mind, in will, in spirit. Overindulgence is the silent destroyer of great men. It does not break them suddenly like a storm tearing down a house in a single night. No, it is more insidious. It erodes them slowly, piece by piece, until one day they wake up and realize they are no longer men of power, no longer men of discipline, no longer men worthy of respect. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, warned against the dangers of unchecked pleasure. He said, "A man is as miserable as he thinks he is." What he meant was that a man who becomes addicted to comfort, to excess, to pleasure will soon find himself a prisoner of his own desires. He will believe he is content, but in truth, he is enslaved. Look at the world today. Everywhere, men are drowning in indulgence. They eat without restraint, filling their bodies with food they do not need. They seek constant entertainment, never allowing themselves a moment of silence. They chase pleasure in every form, whether it be through substances, distractions, or meaningless pursuits. And they justify it all by telling themselves that they deserve it, that life is meant to be enjoyed, that discipline is too harsh, too rigid, too unnecessary. But in doing so, they make themselves weak. A man who indulges in everything loses his ability to say no, and a man who cannot say no to his impulses, to his temptations, to his own weaknesses, is a man who is ruled by them. He is not in control of himself. His desires control him. His cravings dictate his actions. His need for comfort overrides his need for strength. And how can a man be respected when he cannot even respect himself? The great warriors of history understood this truth. They did not allow themselves to be ruled by indulgence. The Spartans lived with minimal luxuries, training their minds and bodies to endure hardship. The Roman legionnaires marched for miles with heavy armor, surviving on strict rations, knowing that a life of excess would make them soft. The samurai followed a code that demanded restraint, that forbade gluttony, that required them to master their desires rather than be mastered by them. Now ask yourself, How much of your life is dictated by indulgence? Do you eat beyond what you need, simply because it tastes good? Do you waste time on distractions, unable to sit alone with your own thoughts? Do you chase comfort, avoiding anything that requires effort, discipline, or sacrifice? Most men do. Most men are slaves to their own impulses, and because of this, most men are not respected. The path to respect begins with control. A man must master his urges. He must learn to say no, not just to others, but to himself. He must train himself to resist the easy path, to deny himself excess, to embrace the discomfort that comes with discipline. Because only through this resistance does he build power. But this is not just about avoiding weakness, it is about building strength. When a man denies himself indulgence, he sharpens his will. When he fasts, he strengthens his control over hunger. When he limits his distractions, he sharpens his focus. When he restrains himself from chasing cheap pleasure, he finds fulfillment in deeper, more meaningful pursuits. A man who can control his appetites is a man who commands respect. He does not give in to every impulse. He does not allow himself to be ruled by cravings. He moves with purpose, with discipline, with the understanding that true strength is not found in indulgence, but in restraint. But how does a man break free from indulgence when it has already weakened him? How does he regain the control he has lost? First, he must recognize that every indulgence, no matter how small, is a test. Every time he chooses discipline over excess, he becomes stronger. Every time he resists the urge to overconsume, he reclaims a piece of his power. He does not need to be perfect, but he must be aware. He must be intentional. Second, he must replace indulgence with purpose. A man who is focused on a mission, a goal, a higher pursuit, has no time for excess. His energy is directed towards something greater, something that requires him to be at his strongest, his sharpest, his most disciplined. He does not waste himself on temporary pleasures because he knows they are distractions from the path he has chosen. And third, he must learn to find strength in discomfort. The modern world tells men that happiness comes from constant pleasure, but this is a lie. True fulfillment comes from challenge, from overcoming hardship, from proving to oneself that he is greater than his impulses. The man who embraces discomfort is the man who commands his own destiny. Look at the men who are truly respected. They are not the ones who indulge in everything they desire. They are the ones who show restraint, who embody discipline, who move through life with an iron will. They do not allow themselves to be consumed by excess. They control themselves, and because of this, they control everything around them. The choice is simple: be ruled by your desires and remain weak, or rule over them and command respect. The men who are remembered, the men who are revered, the men who leave legacies are not the ones who gave in to indulgence. They are the ones who conquered it. Habit 6. The habit of seeking approval. There is no habit more degrading to a man's spirit than the constant need for approval. A man who lives for the validation of others is not a man at all. He is a servant to the opinions of the world, a slave to the expectations of those around him. His actions are not his own. His thoughts are shaped by fear. His existence is dictated by the approval he craves, but never truly receives. Respect is never given to the man who seeks it. It is given to the man who walks his own path, who does not bend to the desires of others, who does not live in the shadow of public opinion. The moment you stop chasing validation, the moment you no longer care for the approval of those who do not matter, is the moment you command true respect. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, understood this deeply. He ruled over millions, yet he wrote in his private reflections, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own." Think about that. You are the one who lives in your body, the one who fights your battles, the one who carries your burdens, and yet you let the voices of strangers dictate how you live. You let their approval shape your choices. You let their opinions define your worth. And for what? A fleeting sense of acceptance? A shallow moment of validation that disappears as quickly as it arrives? A man who seeks approval is weak because he places his value in the hands of others. And when your value is determined by something outside of yourself, you are forever at the mercy of the world. One day they approve, and you feel strong. The next day they disapprove, and you feel worthless. You are a puppet. controlled by invisible strings, never free, never truly respected. But the man who does not seek approval, the man who moves through life with an unshakable sense of self, is the man who commands attention without asking for it. He does not need validation because he validates himself. He does not crave acceptance because he has accepted himself fully. Look at the men throughout history who have been truly respected. Were they the ones who desperately sought the favor of others? No. They were the ones who stood firm in their beliefs, even when the world stood against them. They were the ones who made choices, not based on public opinion, but on principle, on strength, on the unyielding pursuit of something greater than themselves. Socrates, the father of Western philosophy, was sentenced to death for his ideas. He could have begged for his life. He could have sought the approval of the masses, changed his beliefs to align with their comfort. But he refused. He stood by his words, by his truth, and drank the poison with dignity rather than betray his principles. And because of that, his legacy has endured for thousands of years. Most men today, however, are terrified of disapproval. They shape their opinions to fit the crowd. They remain silent when they should speak. They follow trends, not because they believe in them, but because they fear standing alone. And in doing so, they make themselves invisible. They become forgettable, replaceable, weak. The truth is, no one respects a man who is desperate for approval. People may tolerate him, they may even humor him, but they do not admire him. Deep down, they see his weakness. They see his insecurity. They know that he is not truly in control of himself. And respect can never be given to a man who does not command it from within. But how does a man break free from this habit? How does he stop seeking approval when he has spent his entire life chasing it? First, he must understand that no amount of approval will ever be enough. The moment you base your worth on external validation, you will always be chasing more. The approval of one person will not satisfy you, so you will seek the approval of 10, then 100, then 1,000, and still, it will never be enough. The only way to be free is to stop seeking it altogether. Second, he must learn to embrace solitude. A man who is comfortable being alone is a man who does not fear disapproval. He does not need constant validation because he has found peace within himself. He has cultivated a strength that does not depend on the acceptance of others. And third, he must commit to his own path, no matter the consequences. A man who stands by his values, his vision, his truth, regardless of whether others approve or not, is a man who commands respect. Not because he demands it, not because he asks for it, but because he is a force unto himself. The world is full of men who chase approval. But the men who are remembered, the men who are revered, the men who shape history, are the ones who refuse to be swayed by the opinions of others. They walk their path with conviction, with strength, with an unbreakable resolve. And in doing so, they do not seek respect, they embody it. If you want respect, stop asking for it. Stop chasing it. Stop molding yourself to fit the expectations of others. Be a man who stands firm, who moves with purpose, who does not need approval to validate his existence. Because the moment you stop seeking respect is the moment you start earning it.